Welcome back to Biblical Greek Tidbits. In this video, we will look at three words in the Greek New Testament that are variously translated in English by words such as fear, reverence, and awe. In particular, we will see how popular English translations render the Greek words. In order to keep the presentation to a manageable length, we will limit our presentation to the letter to the Hebrews. There are 9 verses in Hebrews that contain one or more of these words. We first list the references used in preparing this video. Here's a list of the major references used in preparing this video. If you want to take a closer look, just pause the video. There are 3 Greek words in the letter to the Hebrews that are variously translated into English by such words as fear, reverence, deep respect, or awe. These are 1. The noun phobos, or the related verbs phobeo or phobeomai. See Hebrews 2:15, Hebrews 4:1, Hebrews 11:23, Hebrews 11:27, Hebrews 12:21, and Hebrews 13:6 for these words. 2. The noun evlavia, or the related verb evlavevamai. See Hebrews 5:7, 11:7, and 12:28 for these words. 3. The noun theos. See Hebrews 12:28 for this word. Let's look at the range of definitions from reference to BDAG for phobos and phobevomai. Phobos, intimidation, something terrible, awe-inspiring, a terror. Fear, alarm, fright. Reverence, respect. And for the verb phobevomai, be afraid, become frightened, have reverence, respect. Also from reference to, we give the range of definitions for evlavia, evlavevomai, and theos. For evlavia, reverent awe in the presence of God. For evlavevomai, be concerned, be anxious, have respect, have reverence. Theos, emotion of profound respect and reverence for deity, awe. Here's a list of the 9 verses in the letter to the Hebrews that we will consider in this presentation. The first occurrence of the noun phobos in the letter to the Hebrews occurs in Hebrews 2 verse 15. For clarity, we will look at verses 14 and 15. Epi un ta pedia kekinoniken ematos ke sarkos ke aftos paraplesios metesken ton afton ina dia tu thanatu katarisi tanta kratos ekanda tu thanatu tu destin ton diavalon ke apalaxi tutus asi favo thanatu diapandas tu zin anarchy isan thulios. Translation: Therefore, since the children share in flesh and blood, he himself likewise also partook of the same, that through death he might render powerless him who had the power of death, that is, the devil, and might free those who through fear of death were subject to slavery all their lives. Although we have used the NASB, New American Standard Bible translation here, virtually all English translations render the dative of phobos in verse 15 by the English word fear. From these verses, Christians should not have the same fear of death that others may have. We are no longer in bondage to the tyranny of death. We are reminded in Romans 8:38 that death is not able to separate us from the love of God. The second word we consider is the verb phavithomen, found in Hebrews 4 verse 1. Phavithomen un mipate katalipomenes epangelias isothen istin katapavsin aftu thaki tis eximon isterikene. Translation: Therefore, let us fear if, while a promise remains of entering his rest, any one of you may seem to have come short of it. There are several English translations that use phrases like, let us take care, NRSV, we must be wary, NET Bible, and let us be careful, NIV, instead of let us fear, which is found in the KJV, the New KJV, NASB, ESV, and HCSB. The phrase let us fear seems to be somewhat stronger than the substitutes used in some English translations. From the larger context, it seems that the stronger phrase let us fear is justified because of the severe consequence suffered by the Israelites when they were not able to enter into the rest of Canaan. We next look at the noun evlavia, which is found in Hebrews 5 verse 7. Os en des imeres tis sarkas aftu deisis teke iketerias prostan dinomenon sozin afton ek thanatu meta kravis iskiros ke dakrion prosenenkos ke isakusthis apartis evlavias. Translation: In the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverence. The KJV and the NKJV phrase the end of this verse with the words, in that he feared, and because of his godly fear, respectively. The Net Bible translates because of his devotion. The NASB translates because of his piety. The NIV and the NRSV translate because of his reverent submission. The rendering of the KJV seems least appropriate since it could leave open the possible interpretation or misinterpretation that Jesus feared the death he was facing. The NKJV greatly improves on the translation by using the phrase godly fear. This is more in line with the idea of reverent obedience. The word evlavia also occurs in Hebrews 11:7 and on the next slide, and Hebrews 12:28 covered on a later slide. We next look at a participial form of the verb evlavevame, which is found in Hebrews 11 verse 7. Pisti krimatis this noa peri ton midepo vlepomenon evlavithis katiskevasen kiviton is sotirion tu iku aftu theis katekwinen ton kosman ketis kata pistin dikesinis ayenato kuranamos. Translation: By faith Noah, being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, in reverent fear, constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. The KJV simply translates the aorist passive participle evlavithis as moved with fear. However, most translations use some modification of the word fear or reverence to translate the participle evlavithis. For example, the Net Bible uses reverent regard, the NIV uses holy fear, and the HCSB uses motivated by godly fear. The NRSV uses the idea of respect. See BDAC definition of the verb evlavevame. It uses the idea of respect, translating, by faith Noah, warned by God about events as yet unseen, respected the warning and built an ark. I particularly like the F.F. Bruce's definition of this verse. See reference 5, page 291, where he remarks that Noah paid careful heed to the divine admonition. This seems to emphasize Noah's faith more than his godly fear. We next look at a form of the verb faveo found in Hebrews 11 verse 23. Pisti Moises yenithis ekrivi triminon ipaton pateron avtu diati idon astion ta pedion keug ephavithison ta diatagma tu vasileos. Translation: by faith Moses, when he was born, was hidden for 3 months by his parents, because they saw that the child was beautiful, and they were not afraid of the king's edict. Virtually all translations use the phrase, they were not afraid, or they did not fear. This speaks well of his parents' faith. Obviously, in this context, the verb ephavithison is not used in the sense of reverence or awe. As an aside, the phrase ton pateron avtu, literally translated his fathers, is used in the sense of his parents. Although the Hebrew Masoretic text states that he was hid by his mother, the Septuagint in Exodus 2 verse 2 makes it clear by using a plural verb that both parents were involved. Ekepason avto minas tris. They hid it for 3 months. We next look at a participial form of the verb faveo, which is found in Hebrews 11 verse 27. Pisti katelepen Egypton mi favithis ton thimon tu vasileos ton gar a oraton os oron ekarterisen. Translation: by faith he left Egypt, not being afraid of the anger of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Here the participial form of the verb faveome or faveo is used. Aorist passive participle, masculine gender, singular number, nominative case. Virtually all translations use some form of the English word fear in their translations. If this is referring to the incident when Moses killed the Egyptian, there's a seeming contradiction here in that, according to the Old Testament, Moses did fear the anger of the king. However, F.F. Bruce reconciles this verse as follows. He was afraid, admittedly, but that was not why he left Egypt. His leaving Egypt was an act of faith. See reference 5, page 322. There are several alternative reconciliations to this seeming contradiction, but we will not pursue them here. There are 2 occurrences of the noun favos found in Hebrews 12, verse 21. Ke utos faveron in ta phantazamenon Moises ipen ekfavas imi ke entramos. Translation: and so terrible was the sight that Moses said, I am full of fear and trembling. The Greek word faveron is translated by the English word terrible in the NASB. Most other translations use the word terrifying. This is consistent with the latter part of the verse, which uses an intensified form of favos. The adjective ekphavos is a compound word combining the preposition ek with the noun favos. The preposition acts as an intensifier, hence the phrase full of fear. The word entramos is almost always translated as trembling, so several translations combine the idea of being full of fear and trembling by a phrase such as I shudder with fear or I tremble with fear. The KJV translates, I tremble with fear and quake. Hebrews 12 verse 28 contains forms of both nouns evlavia and theos. Dia vasilion asalevton paralamvanandes ekumen karin diis latrevamen evarestos to theo meta evlavias ke theus. Translation: Therefore, since we receive a kingdom which cannot be shaken, let us show gratitude by which we may offer to God an acceptable service with reverence and awe. The word evlavios is the same as that previously discussed in Hebrews 5:7. The word theus, neuter singular genitive of theos, occurs only here in the Greek New Testament. Note that when meta is used with the genitive as it is here, it is generally translated as with or among. Theos is translated here as all in virtually all modern translations. The KJV and the NKJV translate theos as godly fear. Hebrews 13 verse 6 contains a form of the verb phaveo. Osta tharundos emas leyin kyrios emi vaithos keu phavithisame ti piisi me anthropos. Translation: So we can confidently say, the Lord is my helper, I will not fear. What can man do to me? Virtually all translations render the verb phavithisame as I will not fear or I will not be afraid. The reason we can have this confidence follows from the promise in verse 5, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. As an aside, phavithisame, I will not fear, future passive, although future in form, has the meaning I will not be afraid rather than I will not become afraid. See reference 3, page 701. There are two other Greek nouns in the New Testament, the lia and the los, related verb the liao, that can also sometimes be translated as cowardice, fear, or timidity, but these words do not occur in Hebrews. See 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, John 14 verse 27, Revelation 21 verse 8, Matthew 8 verse 26, and Mark 4 verse 40. Thank you for watching this presentation.